What you're about to see is the most authentic, honest car factory in the world. Welcome to the Morgan Motor Company. Unlike other factory tours that take weeks of phone calls, emails just to orchestrate, Morgan is an open book. Every other car factory we've been to, we're always ushered past secret rooms that hold future designs and technology worth millions of dollars. This Malvern, England-based workshop holds no secrets. All you'll find here are happy designers, craftsmen and women, the smell of wood, glue, leather, and did I say wood? So what do you need to know about this place? Well, this is the oldest car company in the world owned by a single family. Their designs, not much different from 5 decades ago. They produce a 3-wheeled car, called, well, the 3-wheeler. And simply put, this is just the coolest f***ing place you'll ever visit as a car enthusiast. And what better person to give us a tour than a Morgan, a Mr. Charles Morgan. So, Charles, where are we right now?
Right, well, this is where it starts, really. This is the start of the Morgan assembly line. It all starts with a chassis, of course, that we actually import in from Birmingham, which is only about 30 miles north of us. Yeah. But this is built for us by Radshape to our designs, obviously. I mean, it's designed on a CAD program. And as I say, it's adhesively bonded aluminium. You've got what is the same principle as the racing car. So, in other words, what I'm saying is that the chassis does all the work. So it provides all the stiffness, it provides all of the mounting points for the engine and the gearbox and the powertrain. And we even, of course, fit the fuel tank, we fit all the electric wiring loom, which is neatly hidden inside the chassis. And you can actually start the car, you can drive it as a chassis. So, you know, it's not actually driven, but we do run it. And of course, we run it because we have a quality check that is demanded by BMW or by one of our engine suppliers. And that means you go through all the diagnostic checks on the engine. And what I quite like about that, doing it as a chassis, is that everything is visible. So if there are any leaks or if there's any problems at all, it's all accessible to put right. And that's particularly pleasant if you're an electrical engineer, for example, because modern wiring looms are very, very complicated. And you know what happens in this e-box, there's actually 5 computers, I think, in this car. This is actually the 4.8 litre BMW, which is still a current engine, but they build it specially for us. And the reason they do that is they've gone twin turbo 4.4 litre to keep the emissions down. But actually the 4.8 in this car, because it only weighs less than 2,000 pounds, so what's that? I mean, it's about 1,150 kilos. This car is ultra light, so actually the emissions are very low anyway. So we didn't need to go to the complication of the twin turbos. But this is the diagnostic check equipment, so that allows us to run the engine up.
Are you sure that doesn't pick up Nazi frequencies? Yeah,
it's an early mobile phone, actually. I think one of the reasons why BMW quite like working with us, to be honest, is that most of their cars are steel monocoques. And they tend to be a lot heavier than an aluminium car. So the engineers, I'm not talking about the marketing people here, but the engineers quite enjoy seeing their product in our lightweight frame. That's cool. I mean, Dr. Schmidt, who's left unfortunately, I think he's gone to Ford, but he was the head of engine powertrain at BMW. And he got out of one of the earlier versions of this and said, "At last, Charles, I can feel my engine," you know, because normally it's so quiet, you know.
I wouldn't be able to do a full episode on the history of Morgan, it would just take too long. But here's what you need to know. The roots of the company come from HFS Morgan with a basic vehicle formula. Powerful motorcycle motors, light chassis, simple, resourceful, and fun. And for Malvern, where every road somehow leads up a mountain, that's especially useful. So let's start off with, what is this thing? I've seen it before, but I have no idea what it is.
Okay, well this is our 2009 life car concept vehicle, really. And this was a car that featured a hydrogen fuel cell platform underneath it. So it's a completely zero emissions car.
Okay.
It was a great advertisement for the company because people see a zero emissions car and they go, wow, Morgan are sports car makers building something very environmentally friendly.
Yeah.
But then you actually get into Morgan and the brand and it does a lot more. when you realise that all the materials in this car are locally sourced,
Yeah.
and that the factory itself isn't using big machinery and it's handcrafting these vehicles, it's a low energy manufacture.
Yeah.
The car is very lightweight. You've got all these other fantastic environmentally friendly sort of accreditations that they're adding to it. So it was although it is a zero emissions vehicle, every Morgan is actually very environmentally friendly. They have a long lifespan, they're kept for a long period of time. So yeah, it was just a testament to the way in which we build cars considerably, you know.
I think the one thing that we all noticed when we first come in here was the smell.
Yes, this is the wood shop. I mean, this is very unusual to find a wood shop like this in a car factory. You'll find veneers in a luxury car factory and all that kind of thing. But you won't find guys putting together solid, hard wood, you know, that's grain. I mean, obviously these are the bag presses that when you laminate some wood, this is really heavy, I can pick it up. But when you laminate wood, obviously you put the grain in the different directions and then you bond them together. And of course you want to take all the air out of it that you can to stop the air bubbles in the glue. So that creates a sort of bonded laminate. And that's a very strong component. And of course it's got a lot of spring in it. And it seems to last forever.
Yeah.
So that's partly why we use wood. We also use wood, to be honest, because it's environmentally correct, because it encourages people to plant forestry, and it's the young trees that clean the air. So it's our, if you like, bit of sort of green, greenness too. That we're actually using wood, and sort of sustainable forestry is being kept going by people who use wood. But I suppose the other thing is it gives us a unique proposition, and these days basically there's so much competition in the car industry that we want to maintain something that's very Morgan, something that's very different, and as you said, the smell's very nice too.
Yeah, it's great.
The 1950s Morgan Plus 4 Coupe,
53 coupe.
Yeah, and we've got it here just to show that we can actually build the cars and keep the cars going on the road. And so, I mean, for instance, Morgan probably has got about 40,000 cars around the world.
Yeah.
And they do say that a Morgan never dies. I mean, the wood, look, I mean, it's not in brilliant condition, is it? But the fact is that you can replace it. So basically what people tend to do with Morgans is that they re-chassis them, they re-body them, and they keep them going with components, which again is very, very good from the environmental point of view. Because if ideally what you want to do is produce a product that generation after generation, like a watch, is going to want to keep going. And
you still have
that's very much part of our philosophy.
Scratch.
No, one person definitely is responsible for a chassis and for a wood frame. So, if you like, that gives the ownership to the operator. And, he signs it off. I mean, he could actually sign it. Sometimes they do it. It's this you go beneath. But no, I think it's very important actually to sort of recognize that a car is a combination. It's not one person that builds the whole car, but it's a combination of different people who are actually, are really skilled in their own particular area. The wood's ash. It's English. So it grows fairly straight. Comes from England or Europe, not America.
Okay.
Sorry. But no, it's faster growing in America, but it's a slow grower here. And what's good about it is the grain. You don't tend to get too many knots in it, and so it's you can use a lot of it, and it grows fairly straight, whereas oak tends to go in lots of different directions. But it's the same material as the handle of a cricket bat, for instance. So it absorbs shock really well. In the old days, in the sort of Italian car factories, they had a thing called superleggera, and that was the aluminium body, and then you had a sort of tubular steel frame underneath
Stretched across.
Yeah, and in a sense, this is exactly the same, because this is the structure underneath the aluminium body of the three-wheeler. Under this, of course, is a big tubular chassis. Yeah, but this, if you like, is just a way of keeping the aluminium taut and acting as a little bit of a cushion between the chassis and the body. The problem with superleggera, of course, was that it was steel against aluminium. So, of course, the aluminium reacts with the steel and corrodes. We don't have that problem with the wood. To an extent, this is Morgan superleggera without the problems. When you actually treat the wood, and obviously, this is to a certain extent how much work do you want to put in. A bit like a favourite pair of shoes. They tend to get better with age.
Yeah.
I mean, so will wood. And it will look better and better and better the more you rub it and polish it.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is obviously stupid, but I prefer this style of luxury interior to veneers. I mean, veneers are a sort of acquired taste, really. I mean, veneered cigar boxes and all that kind of thing. It's sort of this is more honest, I think, proper real wood. And of course, what you get here is you get the same thing, where you get every bit of wood is slightly different. Mm-hmm. So you get a very personal product out of wood. Yeah, these jigs are slightly fascinating. I mean, they've been here since the war, I suppose.
What's this a jig for?
And they do the job. Well, this is the rear wheel arch for one of the traditional cars.
Oh,
cool. As you see, it's just 3 bits of ash with the grain going a different direction.
So you've got the vacuum stuff over there.
Yep.
That's
And then you've got
the modern version of this.
Yes. This is just sheer brute force.
And how long are they staying in here for?
Half a day.
It's not that bad.
6 hours. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. It's very cool.
But what I brought to the design team essentially is 3D surfacing. So Matt would sketch the ideas out and I'd draw with him. And then we needed some way of relating these concept sketches and aesthetic design training to the way we build cars on the shop floor.
Got it.
So my job would be to take the sketches and model these in 3D, sometimes in clay as well, but mainly in 3D on the computer screen. We'd apply textures and materials and colours to this and visualise exactly what this car's going to look like. Show this to Charles and say, here you go, Charles, this is your car in 3D.
Yeah.
Once we had the sign-off, we would then chop this car up on the screen, take out some printed plots to the wood shop. They would make this out of wood, and then the panel beaters would handcraft this entire car. So everything you see here is hand-beaten from flat sheet of aluminium.
It's amazing you're going from modern technology back to old vintage technology.
Exactly, yeah.
And that brings up an interesting point. Every corner you turn here, you smell something new and wonderful, like a chef walking into a fresh produce market. But not only that, you start looking at the faces. Less than 200 people work in these workshops. Everyone from designers to wood craftsmen. It's a close-knit family. Men and women with 40 years of experience between these walls, training young teenagers. There are no instruction books, no Volkswagen-era just-in-time logistics systems. Everything is taught by word of mouth with the hands of experience. And yet, despite the archaic methods, it's all just working. It will continue to work for years to come, even as they ramp up daily production.
So once you've got the wood frame, then we cover it in aluminium. And the panels are a combination of preformed and literally hand assembled. So what you'll see is somebody actually wiring the edge of this. So he's turning it around and putting
It's all hand done.
Hand done, yeah. This is actually a 1950s or 1960s body. It's a lot narrower. People were smaller in the old days. So.
Yeah, it seems that way, yeah.
Cars were smaller.
Or maybe they've been lying.
But they're all very light, you see, once you've...
Whoa! Could we both pick it up?
Yeah, of course.
Wow, yeah.
That's a whole car.
That's incredible.
This again is about a 6-hour process to assemble the aluminium panels on it. So we tend to have a half-day cycle throughout the factory so that things move on every half day.
Got it. The Morgans.
I think you'll still find, the affordable cars are using aluminium. I mean, the new Jaguar F-Type is very much an aluminium car, and we pioneered that technology on the Aeros. So, I mean, yes, we're not perhaps pathfinders anymore, but we were pioneers then. Mm-hmm. The trouble with carbon fibre is there's a very short supply of it. It's mostly wanted by the aircraft industry, so the price has gone through the roof. So it's really only supercar territory. Mm-hmm. And our buyers are not necessarily people who want to pay £500,000 for a car. Mm-hmm.
There's certainly elements that have a nod to sort of a more classic era of motoring. And that's what's nice about a Morgan. That Morgan doesn't conform to generic car design. It doesn't follow any rule book. Nowadays, car design can be quite constricted by the rules and regulations and positions of certain parts of the car, and we try not to get too blinded by that. We like the proportion of the Morgan car. The wing line in vehicles like this, we've tried to add a bit more tension to and strengthen it a bit and give it a bit more sort of stance and purpose. But yeah, as you say, that classic form is very much there. It's the sort of British Coke bottle proportion on the side of the car. But as I mentioned, some of these lines are sped up a great deal. There's a lot more sharp edges which break the air away cleaner and improve the aerodynamics, whilst sort of staying true to what we can achieve with the actual materials.
So this is our paint shop, and as I say, once the car's disassembled, they all come in here, and each component is painted. We've actually got two paint shops because the constraint on our production system is paint, really.
Got it.
You know, it's the slowest process is baking the paint.
Waiting.
Yeah, and waiting for it to dry.
In the development department, there is 10 of us, very closely tight-knit team. Where
Are you all in the same?
Literally all in the same room. And everybody is a genius and a specialist in their own right that gets involved with lots of different things. And as you mentioned, you do have to conform to things like homologation and get this passed off. Yeah. In a lot of companies, the design may happen and then enters the next division where you can't do this and can't do that, and something's lost. And then it moves on again, and material engineers can't quite work this, and something else is lost. And you end up with a fairly generic form. But for us, when we're drawing and we're sketching, I've got homologation here looking over my shoulder going, all those headlights need to be a bit higher. Yeah. So I scrap that drawing and I work on the next thing. Yeah. And that, arguably, that could compromise the design in some instances. But what we find is when you do hit the nail on the head and you get something that works, really exciting concept sketch, and homologation are happy straight away. And so are the material engineers, and so is everyone else. That idea has got more chance of making it all the way to the road, to the end user, with that same excitement and drama. I think essentially over the last 10 years, it's been a roller coaster at Morgan. Cars like the Aero have come along and shown people that you can build supercars with this DNA. And when you are building vehicles with those sort of performance figures that the Aeros and even the three-wheeler on the other end of the spectrum you do have to consider a lot more suspension dynamics and aerodynamics and all sorts of stuff. These tests are very expensive and wind tunnels are very expensive, so small companies like us are encouraged really to start using a lot of on-screen simulation. So we run every single CAD model through on-screen CFD.
Ooh, nice and quiet, yes. Yes, we're now smelling cow, or leather, as we would call it. But no, essentially, as I say, the assembly goes back together and then we start to trim the inside of the car. And this is where you see the different specifications that customer wants coming out, because we actually use Scottish leather, so the cars are from Scotland. I think there's less barbed wire up there.
So don't scratch them.
They don't scratch them.
Yeah.
But no, seriously, that's the reason.
No,
actually.
I know. That's
we had the idea for a three-wheeler and we started sketching it. And 18 months later, we're all in the workshop doing a 48-hour stint building the things up ourselves and seeing this design come to life, and it's at the Geneva Motor Show. A matter of a few months later, the first cars are on the road going to production. So you from a sketch to a full, complete production car on the road, you're talking less than 2 years, which is no time really compared to a lot of companies.
Compared to the big manufacturers,
yeah, exactly.
The Americans, the Germans, the Japanese, who spend 6, 7, 8 years designing.
Exactly. And I think that's testament to the way in which we work and the way the factory and development and technology are all united in this pot.
This is basically where all the cars come after they've been road tested.
Okay. Every car gets road tested?
Every car gets road tested. Okay. And then it comes in here, and this is the sort of detailing, if you like. Okay. So it enables us to really, really inspect the paintwork.
Got it.
You know, essentially, each car will spend about half a day in here, get a thorough inspection, and then be passed off for, quality control.
Who's the final person that signs off on a car going to the customer?
One of these guys.
Each person is assigned a car and they sign it off. They go through a checklist of things.
Absolutely.
I think Morgan design is uncompromised. I think it's excitement and fun. And it's happiness, I think people see a Morgan and it makes them feel happy. There's no pretentiousness, there's no arrogance. It's a very honest design, which is challenging, uncompromised. And there's a lot of stories to it, there's a lot of story, there's a lot of meat to talk about in the pub when you pull up,
Morgan's link with motor racing really is that we've used it as a test bed. So essentially, we feel that if a car performs well on the track, then it's going to perform quite well on the road. there are now, of course, test tracks as well, and that's another thing, really. I mean, the German manufacturers will tell you that if you can drive a car at 200 miles an hour, it's going to be really quite good at 100 miles an hour. So there's an element of that in it. But no, we also, of course, were one of the first cars to have a bonded aluminium chassis, adhesively bonded aluminium. Now, when I told that to my father, he said, "Is that a good idea, Charles? I mean, I know we made those Airfix kits, but, you know, should we actually make a car like that?" You know, and so we thought, well, it'd be quite a good thing to test it on the track first, before some poor owner actually finds out that the bonding doesn't work. So, no, seriously though, I mean, Le Mans is a 24-hour race. So if a car lasts 24 hours at VMAX at Le Mans, then it's pretty sure it's going to be a good road car as a chassis. So we use the long distance endurance racing and the GT championships to bottom out exactly what this chassis would do under great stress and under great strain. And of course you do put bigger strain because, you know, typically a modern sticky race tyre will pull 3G, perhaps more, whereas a road tyre will only ever go up to 1 or a bit over 1. So you're putting a hell of a lot more stress into the components. So that's the main reason we do motor racing, because it's all about enjoyment when it comes down to it. I mean, you know, we are about actually a car factory which provides people with the experience of having fun behind the wheel, and I think you still can in safety. You know, I mean, the supercar world and to a certain extent the racing world has just gone completely out of the possibilities of the normal person, and that's a shame because, you know, to an extent Morgan was really about offering an affordable way of going racing, of going into motorsport. I mean, I've got some lovely stories. In fact, one of them is American, of the very first race at Sebring, the 12 hours at Sebring. And in fact, a competitor had his car blow up and was in the pub when a Morgan owner arrived. He'd only just bought his car, I think it was a week old, and he came to watch the race, and the guy in the pub said, "Do you want to enter with me, you know, because my car's blown up?" And this poor bloke went, "Well, all right, you know." So he ends up doing the race, and they came 13th overall.
With the car just off the showroom floor. That's cool. It's very cool.
So that was the sort of philosophy behind Morgan, really, was to provide a car that, you know, without much work, you could enter in a race and do quite well. Yeah. I mean, those days are sadly gone, but, well, internationally they are. Yeah. But, you know, that doesn't mean to say that we don't still believe in that philosophy. This is the top of the hill. I mean, we have a very sophisticated assembly line, actually. Yeah, it's gravity feed.
Yeah.
Well, it's only gravity feed relatively recently, because an engineering guru came around here and he said, "Gosh, this is brilliant. You know, you've got this business of no expensive equipment because you just push the car down the hill." I said, "Yeah, but the problem is we're pushing them up the hill at the moment. So we've changed it now. We are pushing them down the hill."
That's cool. Well,